Welcome to the podcast on buying legal services. I'm Danielle Goodrick, Knowledge Product Manager at CIPS, and joining me today I have Dr. Silvia Hodges Silverstein. Hi Sylvia.
Hello Danielle, how are you?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for joining me. Just to give you some background to Sylvia, she's the Executive Director of Buyin Legal Counsel, who are the international trade organisation for legal procurement, and a professor at Columbia Law School. She's also the editor and publisher of the Legal Procurement Handbook and Winning Proposals, the essential guide for law firms and legal services providers. So Sylvia, I'm delighted to have you join me today. You've got such a huge wealth of experience in the procurement of legal services and have written so much on the subject. So thank you so much for your time today and doing this podcast for our members.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
So for a long time, Sylvia, legal's been seen as the last frontier. So I'm hoping today you'll be able to share what makes legal different and how procurement can lead in this category. If you can also share some expertise and some tips for our members, that would be great. For those starting in the legal category or wanting to enhance the value they can deliver in this area, or wanting to better align with their legal teams. So could you start by explaining what makes the legal category different, Sylvia?
Yeah, absolutely. And, for the longest time, the legal departments have been saying legal is different. They argue that buying legal services is not like buying widgets, like buying paper clips, as they often say, that the legal department can do it perfectly well without procurement's involvement. Thank you very much. And that only lawyers know and understand the nuances and the particularities of buying legal services and so on. But, Danielle, I don't really buy into this legal is different argument. I mean, what does it even mean? Legal services are more complex or less predictable. I think it may look this way because for many, many years, the legal industry hasn't measured a whole lot. If anything, they didn't really look for patterns. That has changed over the last 10 years when during the last recession, procurement was started to be brought in some industries that not only spend tens of millions, but hundreds of millions of dollars or euros or pounds annually worldwide. So because of these large numbers, it really is essential to know market prices, to understand which firm or legal service supplier in which area, in which industry can really create the most value. And it really helps to bring in procurement to help benchmark, to assess the market and the competition, to make the right decisions. So this procurement, taking a more business-driven approach that helps to make the unpredictable predictable and the unplannable plannable, reducing and complexity and assess and reduce risk. Those are, I would argue, core competencies of procurement, and also procurement helps legal departments make the right decisions in a way that also makes the decisions defendable to internal audits, which is more and more, as you know, really important aspect. And quite frankly, I would say to legal procurement relieves you from some tiresome paperwork, long-winded processes, some and not to talk about the typically unpleasant price negotiations. So working with procurement doesn't mean destroying relationships with important firms and lawyers, because, Danielle, that's often the thing that the lawyers are worried about. I'd say on the contrary, to work with procurement in the right way actually means aiming for having strategic partnerships with outside counsel and other legal service providers. And let me add this last thing. What legal procurement, I would say, is it's not replacing the judgment of in-house lawyers regarding which firms to ultimately hire for any particular matter. So it's not that procurement comes in and say, you need to use this lawyer for this new merger and acquisition matter that you're planning. No, it's rather, it is a process that replaces picking firms based on, let's say, historic relationships and perhaps hourly rates, that you replace it with data-driven decisions related to value.
Great, thank you, Silvia. And we've talked about how there's been some reluctance there. So why is it going to be so important for organisations to let procurement get a handle on this spend now for the future?
Yeah, so I would say any organization with significant legal spend for external services or software and so on, say, I would say it's a minimum like 20 million pounds or more annually, and for big pharma, but for big banks and for big insurance, this number even is just ridiculously low. So anyone with a minimum of that kind of spend that does not involve procurement in 2020, in my opinion, is not practicing current best practice. In-house counsel, let's look at the roles. In-house counsel, they are tasked with handling legal issues affecting the organization they work for, from employment law to tax policy, regulatory matters, and they oversee the work of outside counsel. That is their job. And then there is another role that procurement professionals should probably know of. They're called legal ops, which is short for legal operations, and they typically work for the general counsel's department, and they are describe it as a multidisciplinary function that is focused on helping the head of the legal department manage the legal department and optimize legal service delivery for their organization. And as we said before, what legal procurement does, it really applies procurement processes to the legal function. So I would say each stakeholder, in-house counsel, legal procurement, and legal ops, they have their own reason for being and their own area and their own expertise. And so I think together, these three together, they are able to really deliver best value for the organization. So given the enormous sums organizations spend these days on legal services, a laissez-faire approach to buying legal services without procurement's help really borders on negligence. And so this is my plea to all CPOs or heads of indirect spend: get involved and get directive in the legal category. Procurement has the skills, the knowledge, and the experiences to help legal drive costs down and get best value for your organizations.
You touched there on process, structure, and value. So what are the biggest benefits of procurement looking after this spend, would you say, if you were going to sell it internally?
So other than obviously taking over some of the roles that legal is typically not trained for and might not like to do, as I said, the pricing negotiations and so on, I would say, so really a more effective management of external legal spend, as well as identifying opportunities for innovative billing arrangements. So not just we have a rate card and you law firm just tell us how many hours and what kind of staffing level. So really, something a little bit more innovative. Then I think procurement is also good at better unbundling legal services and then saying, okay, so this part needs to be done by perhaps the city law firm, and this can be done by maybe a so-called law company or a legal process outsourcing company, or this can be automated. So really matching better who can do what. And then procurement, other benefits are that they're really good at establishing an efficient and robust vendor selection process. And last but not least, identifying and managing best value legal services and working with the suppliers. So the firms don't normally like to be called suppliers, but working with the firms and other suppliers in legal to get the best menu. So ideally, and this is really, I think, important, ideally legal procurement is involved in the entire process of buying legal services, so including the selection and the ongoing management of suppliers. that is law firms and other legal service providers. So not just, okay, here's an RFP, do your work, and then
Yeah.
please go again for the next few years. So that is, in my opinion, really wrong.
And owning that space, I suppose, and owning that category from end to end.
Absolutely. Yes, be a trusted partner to legal.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So I guess you might come up against some reluctant stakeholders in the legal department.
Say it isn't so.
So what would your tips be for winning over some of these difficult or resisting stakeholders?
So initially it was really, really difficult, I tell you. So when I discovered that procurement was involved in some corporations, and I've wrote a Harvard Business School case study about GlaxoSmithKline's pioneering work in legal procurement. I will never forget when the head of legal procurement, when I spoke with him, and I said, so what was your secret to success? And he turned around and showed me his behind, and I'm like, okay, that's interesting. He said, I got so many kicks in my you know what, and I still came back. So I mean, that aside, yes, so historically I would say in-house lawyers are often not fans of procurement and procurement processes, at least initially. I think that really has changed in the last few years. I mean, we have 2020 now, so I think it's definitely changed. It's not necessary so much anymore. But if you are in a situation where legal doesn't like the business people and necessarily, and doesn't get measured, or doesn't for some reason doesn't think that savings are as important to them as it might be historically to procurement, you really have to start with building a relationship with legal. So if possible, sit with your colleagues in legal and schedule regular meetings, ask them questions, understand their issues. Don't do procurement to them, really learn how they speak, learn the legal jargon, and come up with different options or scenarios. I found that very useful, because lawyers by nature and training, I would say, they're trained to argue and find fault. So if you show them different scenarios, they can then reason about which one is the most fitting and the most appropriate solution, and are more likely to embrace it and come up with an agreement why this is a win, so they don't feel like, oh, if I yield to procurement, I lose. So it's not doesn't all have to be a win-lose. It's not a zero-sum game. So building relationship, I think, is really absolutely essential. Then I would say try to be useful. So do a lot of legwork for the team. For example, when you issue an RFP, so do the analytics, but understand first what is important to them, and research alternatives, and make it clear that you are aware of their concerns, so that you're not just about the cheapest price and all these things that we in procurement always get accused of, and that you understand what I know it sounds so jargony, but what keeps them up at night. But
yeah, definitely.
If you understand that, and also it's always good, I believe, to understand how they are measured, because that will drive at least some of their behavior. And so use all of this when you make suggestions for different processes, for analysis or choices. And then I think you really need to try to win them over. So when you present to legal, yes, you can shine with your PowerPoints and analytics and insights, but I think that they say that, and that might be a little bit outdated, but the law attracts lots of very intelligent people who don't like math too much. So don't avoid some overly complicated math. Distinguish clearly between savings and cost savings, and discuss the difference, and have clear apples to apples comparisons that they can agree with, and yes, really easily accessible charts and tables. You can start with showing your top matters by spend with information for different practice areas, for different firms or individual lawyers, so that they can say, oh, I was not aware of this or that. And so you know, you can really start to have a dialogue with them, and at that point in time, hopefully they will feel comfortable enough with you to then maybe you know, call you not only in an RFP situation, but in between as well, as I said before.
Yeah, definitely. And spending that time, I took away from that early on to understand what they want to achieve as well, would you say? So
absolutely, yes. It's part of this building this relationship.
This relationship and trust as well, isn't it, with them, so that they feel comfortable with you looking after their area that they're quite protective of. So is there any steps you could recommend for members they could take to build these better relationships? Is there like a process you would recommend or anything?
Yeah, so I think that what you said about trust, I think that is absolutely important. And obviously, if the let's say the head of the legal department and your head of your department, whether that's your CPO or your CFO, if they are both on board, that is definitely a brilliant situation, and one that is going to be paving the way. So having particularly having the
senior
support,
buy-in.
yes,
That's senior buy-in. Yeah.
But having the general counsel support, that really will make or break. If the GC is not on board with this, you will have a very hard time. So I would say that is definitely maybe a discussion to be had between, as I said, your CFO, CPO, or and the general counsel, because otherwise they will just give you, I suspect, the runaround, and you will never get the data that you need for you to do your analysis. And it needs to be clear what are the goals that you are supposed to reach, to, you know, maybe for initial savings, or for certain processes that are supposed to be changed and established. And so I would say, in terms of steps, so yes, there definitely needs to be some senior involvement. I think that a good first step is to really understand what they are currently doing. So what are their current processes, and refrain from making any comments and pulling out your hair right in front of them. If you're like,
nod politely.
yes, don't do that. And so just really try to learn from them what they are doing, and maybe there is some some brilliant nuggets in what they're doing, and maybe it's just really improvable, but and you can show your expertise. So aim to be an expert, learn about what your organization is spending most money on. Have a rate card analysis, or find out who the highest billers are, but please do be aware that just because you know how much on timekeeper charges, you still don't have really much information, because you don't know how many hours they might charge you, and what level of timekeeper the firm is going to give you. Then I would say really become close friends with your colleagues in legal operations or legal ops, if your organization has that. They typically are the stewards of the data that you need. So they typically control the billing system, the matter management system, and unless you're involved, they are the only ones typically they guard the relationship with inside and outside counsel. So really become good friends with your colleagues in legal operations. And then I would say, I don't want to say be fast and furious, let's say be fast and flexible. So when they call you to from legal to run an RFP, do it quickly, because the last thing that you want to be seen as is the bottleneck.
Yeah, or a blocker, yeah.
Yes, you definitely don't want to be that. So
Okay,
that should
that's
happen.
no, that's really helpful. And I would say look at maybe any challenges that they may have and try to get some quick wins under your belt, perhaps, if you can understand those.
Any quick wins? You mean how you can come in and say how you can help, or
Help, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So one of the typically best ways to show that you are really able to help something. Again, it needs to be that not only you are interested in savings, but legal has some interest in that as well. For example, help to establish outside counsel guidelines where it's very clear what it is allowed that the firm is able to charge you for and what they're not allowed to charge you for, and then make it clear to the firms that yes, they have to sign that and that they will have to invoice you in the appropriate manner, and that they are being watched. And we've seen enormous savings just by basically saying we are watching you. And it's not necessarily that they are all evil and try to get lots of extra thousands of pounds out of you. It's just that how the systems are set up, and it's sometimes difficult that different invoices are being sent out, and so on. So I think that outside counsel guidelines and an invoice review, that is a good first step. And or a quick win often. Another thing could be might take a little bit longer, but establish an electronic billing system for legal services, so that a lot is automated, so that we've seen a lot of success with that as well.
That's great. And I think there's quite a lot of our members who might be new to this category. It's quite a big area that people are learning with. So what would be your takeaway tips for someone starting in this category to get them started?
Yeah, so I mean, I already said, you have really build this trust. So reach out, start building these relationships with legal, and I think that will be my number one thing. So really seek collaboration. Maybe number two, listen to them, understand how they make the decisions, what works for them, what doesn't work for them. So educate yourself. Like what are the particularities that lawyers hold very dearly, and offer your help. I think that sort of do the things that they don't like doing. I think those would be something that endears you to them very much. And then I would probably start with a pilot in an area that is perhaps not so important to them. I'm not saying that this area is not important, but often lawyers have perhaps in-house counsel have perhaps less of a preference for this service over another. But these so-called ancillary legal services, so that can be medical records companies or court reporters, or that could be translation services and so on. So start with something like that and show how you can add value. So yeah. present the business case and then make your colleagues in the legal department look good, so that they are as good stewards of the company's money.
That all sounds great tips there. Thank you so much for your time today, Silvia. I think for those listening, hopefully they found that really valuable when reviewing their strategy in this category. I'd just like to say thank you to everyone for listening today. We really hope you enjoyed the podcast. It's the first one we've done in this category, and we hope to do more. And you can hopefully take away some of the tips today to proactively take action in your organisations and show how you can get more involved, or hopefully some tips to win over your legal teams as well. So you can follow the CIPS Knowledge podcast channel and access all the other latest content via cips.org/knowledge. So thank you again, Silvia, and goodbye.
Thank you very much for having me. Bye-bye.
Great, bye.
So how did this go?
One sec.